like to welcome you to the second day of the great mysteries of our time. Today the topic is going to be the phenomenon of UFOs. I know that most people are skeptics, or at least many people are when you come to this subject, and certainly I have had that same experience myself in the past, although I too have experienced sighting an unidentified flying object, which I'm going to be talking about later today in a panel discussion. I remember about 2 years ago, Atlantic Monthly published a very, very long and in-depth article in which it gathered some of the most well-known scientists in the country to consider the question of whether there were such things as UFOs. The answer from these scientists was a resounding no. Interestingly enough, in August of 1991, which would have been about 8 years ago, I found another article in Atlantic Monthly, which was from a very different perspective. It detailed a conference that had taken place, I believe, in Utah, Arizona, somewhere in that area. And the writer of the article was a psychiatrist. And what it does is it brings together many people who have experienced being abducted, although I don't know if that's the correct word, but having what they call experiences or close encounters of the fourth kind, where they have actually experienced being in close proximity to space aliens or some form which they cannot explain. That was taken very seriously in that article, and this psychiatrist, very credentialed, along with some others, felt that it was not something that should be so easily dismissed. It reminds me of things such as hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago when everyone insisted that the earth was flat. And of course anyone who said otherwise was a lunatic. It wasn't all that many hundreds of years later that a guy said, no, the sun does not revolve around the earth, it's the other way around, the earth revolves around the sun. He too was declared a lunatic until it was discovered that indeed he was correct. Mrs. Aleuti Francesca, Dr. Aleuti Francesca, who will be our speaker today, has come to discuss this mystery. You know, what is the right and wrong of it from her experience? She comes from London, England. That's where she was born. She spent many years as a concert singer and poet. But since she was 16 years old, she's had a real interest in all kinds of phenomena, including ESP, metaphysics, and UFO phenomenon. She has taught and appeared on radio programs on these subjects. She told me just a few moments ago that she was a lecturer at the World UFO Conference held at the Great Pyramid in Egypt. So I think we have a rare and wonderful opportunity to listen to a woman who has a great deal of experience in this field, and she will be talking with us for the entire hour, which brings me to the bad news. That is, there will probably not be enough time for questions and answers at the end of this hour. However, we will be having a panel discussion in the Bonner Room at 1 o'clock, and that will be a wonderful time for you to come and bring your questions. And so, with no further ado, I would like to give you Dr. Aleuti Francesca.
I think you just walked off with my first sheet. Since I have so many notes and so much research material, it's important that I keep it organized. First of all, I would like to comment on what was said in the introduction. As far as I'm concerned, UFOs are not a mystery. They are not unidentified, as Major Wayne Aho said many years ago. They should be called UFOs, identified flying objects. Also, as far as the scientists who are saying that they don't exist, that's rather like an ostrich burying its head in the sand. There are many, many reputable scientists who are very well aware that they do exist. And Dr. Stanton Friedman, many years ago, stated that he felt a cosmic Watergate was going on. I think it's a good term about the ETs, the extraterrestrials who are visiting this planet. I would like to mention that I'm not only a researcher on ETs, I am also a telethought contactee, which I suppose from some people's viewpoint puts me way out in left field. But I would like you to consider the research part of this lecture, and also please do come to the documentary, very evidential UFO movie Contact, which will be shown this afternoon after the panel. It's a 90-minute documentary, and if you want the evidence, please come to that, because that has very solid evidence. Since 1947, when Kenneth Arnold first saw 9 disc-shaped objects flipping around over Mount Rainier in Washington state, a trail of various shaped and colored craft have appeared in the skies of Earth, and although many of these craft have not in any way resembled a saucer, the name has stayed. Flying saucers, as they were called by Kenneth Arnold, that airline pilot who first saw them, have presented the 20th century with its greatest enigma. Where are these craft coming from? What are they? Who mans them? Who womans them? What is their purpose in coming? And you'll find a little later on that many of them are being piloted by women. The newspapers of the world have written thousands of articles speculating on these questions. Governments have debated them, and the man in the street has listened and has formed his own opinions. At least we hope the man and the woman in the street has formed their own opinions. As far as evidence, as far as documentary evidence of the coming of UFOs, it's utterly inconceivable to me how any intelligent scientist can possibly say that they don't exist. Because back in 1967, UN Secretary General U Thant said UFOs at that time were the second most important world problem facing the United Nations next to the war in Vietnam. These things that don't exist. He had been receiving reports from UN delegates from many nations concerned about the increasing number of UFO flights over their country, and he arranged for Dr. James E. McDonald, Professor of Atmospheric Physics at the University of Arizona, to speak before the United Nations Outer Space Affairs Committee, pleading for greatly increased investigation and review of the problem on a global basis. Dr. McDonald believed that UFOs were extraterrestrial spaceships on reconnaissance missions to explore the Earth. And when he was interviewed on Louis Lomax's TV show in Los Angeles in July of that year, he stated, and I think you need to remember this, he said, "The Air Force investigation is really quite a joke. It's incompetent and quite superficial." One point I want to make very emphatic, he said, is that after taking a very close look at Air Force Project Blue Book, it simply has to be waved aside as not a serious investigation, and this is why scientists such as myself and scientists in other parts of the world have not previously taken a look at the problem. We have assumed all along that the Air Force has been checking the cases and doing it with expertise, but that's not the case at all. Then he added this very important statement. He said the CIA asked and got from the Air Force a debunking policy. The actual wording of the recommendation is to debunk the flying saucers to decrease the public interest in them. Interesting statement. That policy has been systematically followed since that time. And that is why, particularly here in the United States, there is such a great deal of ridicule attached to this subject. In other parts of the world, there is not this ridicule. In fact, certain countries are putting down landing strips for extraterrestrials to land on. Now, as far as the evidence goes, back 10 years ago, the Soviets, of course they were then the Soviets, issued a report that UFOs were spying on us. This report was leaked to Stanton Friedman, Dr. Friedman, through NASA, which had kept a copy of the report in its files, but had kept it a closed secret. The report was by radio astronomer Ellen Gindelis for the Soviet Academy of Sciences, and it said, by all the preliminary indications, spacecraft entering our systems from universes beyond are controlled either directly or indirectly by intelligent beings of some sort. The report was part of the Russian program called SETI, or Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Friedman said that its author was one of the highest honored and most respected in Russia and is secretary of a section of the Academy of Sciences Scientific Council on Radio Astronomy, which is detecting space signals of unknown origin. The Russian radio astronomer disclosed that he and his colleagues had been trying to establish radio contact with extraterrestrial civilizations for the last 20 years, which takes it back into the late 50s or early 60s. And they noted very peculiar features in the radio waves. Gindelis said, and I found this statement particularly interesting, that Russian scientists were prepared for the possibility that space aliens are communicating by means that are unknown in modern physics. But in fact, other means of communications could exist that are based on other natural phenomena unknown to us at the present. Means unknown in modern physics does include telethought communication, which is the type of communication that many people, myself included, have received from certain of the space commands of the light confederations. So we do have scientists, at least outside of the United States, and certainly the late Dr. Alan Hynek, the late Dr. James MacDonald, who was found with a bullet in his head under very suspicious circumstances after stirring up a great controversy about this at the United Nations. He was found in the desert many years ago with a bullet in his head. So we do have a cosmic Watergate going on. We also have another eminent man, James Deardoff, Professor Emeritus from Oregon State University in Corvallis, winner of the American Meteorological Society's prestigious Rossby Gold Medal for his work in what? Atmospheric research. He stated that the idea that mankind is unique doesn't make sense and that it could be as many as 10 million independently evolved societies in our galaxy, many of them more evolved than we are. Dr. Deardoff, whom I've spent some time with, took early retirement at 58 to devote full-time research to his investigation of UFOs, and his findings were published in the State Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society of England. He made this very interesting statement. He said, recent research shows that all life in the universe is likely to be chemically similar to Earth's life forms, and therefore is likely to be humanoid. I think since his work is in atmospheric research, he should be considered to be an authority. Back in 1977, to answer those of you who are going to say, why is it that these extraterrestrials do not contact Earthmen en masse? Back in 1977, an alien voice broke into the scheduled newscast being read by Ivor Mills on Southern ITV in southern England, and it broadcast its own message for 5½ minutes. Did any of you know about that? Amazing, isn't it? You'd think that would have made world headlines, but instead the authorities fell over themselves to denounce it as a fake, as a hoax, but it wasn't. When it was closely investigated, it was found that all the test insertion signals which pick up any hoax, any people breaking into a station or breaking into the mast and beaming in a pirate signal could not account for this because it wasn't picked up by the test insertion signals, it wasn't picked up by the engineers because it apparently was not using Earth electricity. So there is no way that this message, which continued for 5½ minutes and was heard by millions of people, could possibly have been a hoax. Would you like to know what they said? I think you have a right to know. I think you have a right to know there is a cosmic Watergate going on. Now this was played slowly and speeded up and slowed down again. The only problem they had, the voice seemed to be deep and slightly wavering as if coming through water and mechanical, was the actual pronunciation of the name. So they gave two pronunciations here. This is the entire message that came through. They said, this is the voice of Gamar or Brahmaha, the representative of the Asteron or Ashtar Galactic Command speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the sky. We speak to you now in peace and wisdom as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in the Great Awakening as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. The new age can be a time of great evolution for your race, but only if your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgment. Be still now and listen, for your chance may not come again for many years. Your scientists, governments, and generals have not heeded our warnings. They have continued to experiment with the evil forces of what you call nuclear energy. Atomic bombs can destroy the Earth and the beings of your sister worlds in a moment. The waste from atom power systems will poison your planet for many thousands of your years to come. We who have followed the path of evolution for far longer than you have long since realized this, that atomic energy is always directed against life. It has no peaceful applications. Its use and research into its use must be ceased at once, or you will risk destruction. All weapons of evil must be removed. The time of conflict is now past, and the races of which you are a part may proceed to the highest planes of evolution, if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. You are free to accept or reject their teaching, but only those who learn to live in peace will pass to the higher realms of spiritual evolution. Hear now the voice of Brahma or Brahmaha, the voice of the Astron or Ashtar Galactic Command speaking to you. Be aware also that there are many false prophets and guides at present operating on your world. They will suck your energy from you, the energy you call money, and will put it to evil ends, giving you worthless dross in return. Your inner divine self will protect you from this. You must learn to be sensitive to the voice within that can tell you what is truth and what is confusion, chaos, and untruth. Learn to listen to the voice of truth which is within you, and you will lead yourselves onto the path of evolution. This is our message to you, our dear friends. We have watched you growing for many years, as you too have watched our lights and your skies. You know now that we are here and that there are many more beings on and around your earth than your scientists admit. We are deeply concerned about you and your path towards the light, and will do all we can to help you. Have no fears. Seek only to know yourselves and live in harmony with the ways of your planet Earth. We of the Astron Ashtar Galactic Command are leaving now the planes of your existence. And that was a very important statement that I'm going to touch on again later. They said, we thank you for your attention. May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos. That was the entire message, which was never reprinted, never replayed in any of the media following this amazing breakthrough. We find, therefore, that there is evidence, and as I said, the documentary movie, which is being shown this afternoon, will give you scientific evidence, if that's what you're looking for. We have the phenomena of crop circles, which are appearing very much in England, some in France, some even in Eastern Oregon, which most likely are tied in to extraterrestrials. Despite the feeble attempt to explain them away by a couple of hoaxers who supposedly were going around with rope and a board, amazing how much funding they've had for 20 years and how many places they've managed to travel to if they really had covered these hundreds and hundreds of crop circles all over the world. Once again, you find that the debunking statements, feeble though they are, receive the media's publicity. There is a book out from England on the crop circles, and I have some of this research material here, which I'll bring to the panel this afternoon. Now, what I think is important to discuss, and it seems such a limited amount of time to me because I'm used to doing an evening's program. So I'm trying to get as much material to you as possible in this time that I have available this morning. What I think is important to discuss is types of space beings. There are many different types of space beings coming, and I think you should be aware of these and the fact that you can at least, as I said to the reporter who interviewed me yesterday, you can at least divide them roughly into the good guys and the bad guys. What do you hear about? The abductions. What do you hear about? The bad guys, the little gray guys with the big eyes and the little diver suits. Okay, the grays do exist, and the psychiatrists and myself, because I do regression consultations. Incidentally, I will be available to do 3 or 4 only tomorrow. For anyone who is interested can check with Dr. Tony Stewart at the table back there after this lecture. I have regressed people who have missing time, missing memory, who have been abducted. So the greys do exist, and many psychiatrists all over the country and in other countries who met at a symposium in Kansas March of last year are discussing the phenomena of abduction, which is emerging under hypnotic recall. The greys can be divided into 3 types: grey 1 with a very large head, 3.5 feet tall, large slanted eyes, who worship technology. They don't give a damn about mankind. Grey 2, similar to these, more sophisticated than grey 1, and grey 3, same basic type, lips much thinner, more subservient to the other 2 greys. This definition has been broken down by men. I think this particular one was connected with Bill Cooper, and the other types of entities that are coming, beings, humanoid, are those who are known as the blonde Swedes or Nordics. They are very similar to human beings, often taller, very beautiful, perfect physical specimens, blonde or reddish hair with blue eyes. These will not break the universal law of interference, of non-interference, to help us. They will only intervene if grey activity could have an adverse effect. Then we have the interdimensional beings, and I'm going to talk a lot more about that, because the interdimensional beings, and I'm going to show you a chart, are those by and large that are contacting from the space commands of the confederations of light. We also have drones created by the greys, who are mocked up to look like humans, and we have some very strange, odd-looking creatures that those of you who came yesterday know as monsters. They are not connected with the UFO activity, but they appear to some people to be connected. In one of the telethought transmissions I had, it explained that these are coming from what may be termed inner and not outer space, and are an elemental type being. So those are the types of space beings. The interdimensional beings are those that are coming from other areas in space, particularly from the Pleiades. And there are several statements which have been given from various sources which correlate completely as to the existence of interdimensional beings. I think it would be helpful if we could have the chart on the screen now. The correlation, okay, look at the bottom part of the chart. Can we move it up a little bit, possibly, so it's a little higher? Thank you. This chart came originally from the Arcane School and also appeared in Gloria Lee's book, One Year Here. This is, from an esoteric viewpoint, the 7 planes of existence. The physical plane in which we find ourselves at the bottom, the emotional or astral plane known to psychic researchers, the mental plane, the intuitional or soul plane, the spiritual, monadic, and divine plane. Concern yourselves at the moment mainly with the section at the bottom, the physical plane. The physical plane is subdivided into, as all of these planes are, 7 subplanes. Now, if you look in the right-hand corner, you will find at the bottom that our physical life exists at the level of dense, liquid, and gaseous. That is our known world. Above that, the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st etheric also exists, which is part of the physical plane. And this has presented the greatest enigma and confusion to UFO researchers. This is also why many scientists do not understand, because they only are aware of the 3 lower subplanes of dense liquid and gases. That is our known world, that is all that they know. However, according to many space contacts, my own, Myers in Switzerland, and that statement that was made over ITV in southern England, they are coming from other levels or dimensions of being, which are still physical, known in esoteric science as the physical etheric level, whereas ours is the physical dense. Now, the only rough analogy I can use to make this easier to understand, and please bear with me because I'm not a scientist, I want you to think of an electric fan. The blades, when it is plugged in, the blades begin to move. As they move faster, if you put your finger in there, you'll find out they're very physical. But as they move faster and faster, you no longer see them as physical solid matter. They're vibrating too fast, aren't they? But if you put your finger in there, it will chop your finger off. And this is exactly what happened to Captain Mantell back in the early days, the late 40s of UFO sightings, when he flew his plane into the force field of a UFO, and the plane disintegrated. The fan blades are just a rough analogy of speeded up vibratory rate. When the space being slowed down the vibratory rate, as the fan blades can be slowed down, they again become visible to the physical retina of your eyes. So we are dealing with interdimensional beings who are coming from other planes of existence. What was the last statement made over at ITV? They said, "We are now leaving the planes of your existence. May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos." What did they say when they contacted Edward Billy Meyer in Switzerland in 1975? And these people landed, and this is the movie based on the evidence, the movie footage, the analysis of the craft, and the sound of the craft, which I'm also going to let you hear a little of this morning. They said, when entering your terrestrial state of existence, we are forced into making a slight adjustment which allows us to function properly within your dimensional world. Therefore, this connection ensures a correct state of mind and corresponds with the human vibrational pattern which is necessary for the mutual exchange to take place. It is very similar to your adjusting the fine-tuning dial on your sensitive communication receivers, which, when accomplished, allows you perfect reception. In our case, it allows for perfect perception and acclimates us to your physical world of being. This procedure is mandatory for all terrestrial life forms that visit Earth from other dimensions. Without this slight adjustment, no contact could take place. This statement was made by Semyazi, the woman commander of the Pleiadian spacecraft, coming from the Pleiades in a matter of 7 hours. Your scientists will tell you this is not possible. When you see the movie this afternoon, you will find scientists in Scotland who say, indeed, it is possible, and it would take about 7 hours in hyperspace drive. Back in 1966, during one of the telethought transmissions which I received, and please understand, this telethought transmission is not a voice, a disembodied voice that I hear. I'm not in a state of trance, as in the case of, let's say, J.C. Knight. I am in a slightly altered state of consciousness, and I simply receive this through telethought transmission. It comes in, first a title flashes in, and then a communication. And back in '66, before I knew anything about Billy Meyer, because his work was not publicized until '75, this transmission was entitled Density Level Transition. They said that a frequency change will take place in the near future on our planet. And they said many of us whom you speak with are of this composition in our bodies, more etherealized, but still of matter. And therein has lain much of the misunderstanding among your peoples as to our nature. We can and do lower the frequency rate of our bodies to become visible to the physical retina of your eyes. We are physical. We are physical etheric, whereas you are physical dense. A small difference, but an important one, my brothers, my sisters, upon which it would be well for you to dwell. The composition of all matter upon your planet is rapidly reaching a point where it will either become of a finer etherealized structure or will disintegrate. You will witness both of these phenomena taking place during your period upon the planet. I speak with you in order to prepare your minds for that which lies ahead. And he went on to explain part of what is going to happen. The main thing is the density level transition, that telethought communication of 66, is saying exactly the same thing as Semyazi said to Maya in Switzerland, and it's saying exactly the same thing as the voice from space who spoke of leaving the planes of our existence, said in 1977 through ITV. If all these things are fakes and hoaxes, it's amazing how totally they correlate. What happened in 1953 and 54? This is where the space aliens in a big way entered the picture. I need to touch on this, although I see time is going much too fast. Apparently, in 1953, astronomers discovered large objects in space moving towards the Earth. At first, they were believed to be asteroids. Later evidence proved that the objects could only be spaceships. Project Sigma intercepted alien radio communications, and when the objects reached the Earth, they took up a very high orbit around the equator. There were several huge ships, and their actual intention was unknown. Project Sigma and a new Project Plato, through radio communications using the computer binary language, were able to arrange a landing that resulted in face-to-face contact with alien beings from another planet, the Greys. Project Plato was tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with this race of space aliens. However, and this is during the Eisenhower administration. However, in the meantime, a race of human-looking ETs had contacted the US government. They warned against the other aliens that were orbiting the equator and offered to help us with our spiritual development. They refused to exchange technology, citing that we were spiritually unable to handle the technology which we then possessed, which was absolutely true. They believed that we would use any new technology to destroy each other, and they stated that we were on a path of self-destruction and must stop killing each other, stop polluting the earth, stop raping the earth's natural resources, and learn to live in harmony. Doesn't that sound very much like the message that came through ITV? These terms, of course, were met with extreme suspicion, especially the major condition of nuclear disarmament. It was believed that meeting that condition would leave us helpless in the face of an obvious alien threat. We had nothing in history to help with the decision. Nuclear disarmament was not considered to be within the best interest of the United States, and the overtures were rejected. However, when in '54 the race of large-nosed grey aliens which had been orbiting the Earth landed at Holloman Air Force Base, a basic agreement was reached. This race identified themselves as orbiting or originating from a planet around a red star in the constellation of Orion, which we called Betelgeuse. They stated that their planet was dying and that at some unknown future time they would no longer be able to survive there. This led to a second landing at Edwards Air Force Base, the story that you heard on Unsolved Mysteries of President Eisenhower being spirited away to the base, covered by a story of having to visit the dentist. He was in Palm Springs on vacation, and he met with the aliens, and a formal treaty between the alien nation, according to William Cooper, who has issued this material and was a naval officer with access to some of this. A treaty between the alien nation and the United States of America was signed. The first alien ambassador from outer space, one of the Greys, was met with, and the trilateral insignia, which is on the alien flag, was displayed. Both of these landings and the second meeting were filmed. According to Cooper and John Lear, the son of the aircraft manufacturer Lear, these films still exist. As far as I can see, and I'm still a British citizen, this treaty was treason. It was made without the knowledge or consent of the Senate, the Congress, or the American people. It was arranged for technology to be exchanged, their technology, the Greys' technology, in exchange for being allowed to abduct people, do medical experiments on them, take sperm and ova, and later it was discovered genetic engineering was going on. This accounts for the Greys, the abductions, the medical examinations that you hear publicized so much in the media. But it was agreed to. And very naively, it was suggested that provided these people be returned intact and their names and addresses be given, it was okay to do this. So it would seem that your government has left you open to thousands and thousands of people being abducted, and I have regressed some of them, and they're pretty scared. And all the psychiatrists who are discovering this phenomena all over the planet are finding that there are many, many scared people out there, and they're coming up with the identical stories in many different countries, so they could not possibly be fabricating these under hypnosis of the identical medical and genetic experiments. Now let's go to the confederations of light. The beings that are coming from the Pleiades, from other dimensional areas, even of planets within our own system. They have a policy of non-interference in planet Earth's internal affairs. They are concerned, as you have seen, with the destructive process occurring on our planet environmentally and otherwise. But they will only intervene en masse if the Earth is faced with an outside danger it cannot handle. And this has been my information also. Scenario 1, if a comet or asteroid on a collision course with the Earth is involved. Scenario 2, if the Earth or any nation on the Earth starts a nuclear war threatening to destroy the planet and affects the balance of nearby planetary bodies. Scenario 3, if an outside invading technology threatens to take over planet Earth, which scenario could be a possibility if the Greys get any more aggressive. So we have a situation very clearly of the good guys and the bad guys. And we have other races coming from other areas who are coming purely to watch the experiment of how Earthman is going to handle this crisis. This crisis, which is now proliferating and will reach its climax around the end of this period, around 2000 to 2010, all these events will climax. Now, because there is so much material here, and I have a great deal dealing with the nature and where they are coming from of certain of the negative space intelligences, I don't have time to go into that now, which is why I normally do a 2-day intensive ET seminar, which unfortunately is not going to be able to happen up here. I am, however, available for future lectures in this area, particularly I'm told for the people who have come from Sandpoint who may be interested. Please contact me afterwards. I want to play for you for a few minutes the sound of the Pleiadian spacecraft as it was recorded by Maya. Maya is a one-armed man riding around on a moped. So if you've heard that he's a fake, it's amazing how this man with one arm is throwing 20 and 30-foot models up into the air and photographing them. So if we could have that, and then I'd just like to end with a few paragraphs from one of the telethought transmissions. Again, before we go to the sound of the spacecraft, I will be available for private regression consultations tomorrow at the Coeur d'Alene Resort Hotel, and these can be booked with Dr. Tony Stewart at the table there. I also have some of my fall-winter newsletters available and a mailing list for any of you, and also a waiting list for anyone who is interested, has been abducted, or is interested in regression consultation for other reasons. Could we have the sound of the Pleiadian spacecraft now?
Anyway,
Thank you.
he's working with a broken camera. He's a one-armed man working with a broken camera, and he uses a standard setting because he's not a photographer, because this is no hobby of his or anything else. He uses a standard setting of 1/125th of a second shutter speed. He uses a lens aperture of f8 or f11, depending on sun or clouds. If there's sun, he uses f11. If there's clouds, which is most of the time in Switzerland, he uses f8. And he's been using ASA 100 color slide film, and he's used all the varieties. He's used Ektachrome, he's used GAF, Fujichrome, and a number of others. The contacts are still going on. I'll tell you about something else. I'm going to come to a picture in here. I'm going to show you picture sequences, as I said, that you haven't seen before, and I'm going to work up to a picture that is in the book. For those of you that have seen the book, it's a picture of a UFO with a jet fighter. In the picture, the jet fighter is making passes on the UFO. It's been vectored in by switch radar. The jet makes 22 passes on the spacecraft. At that point, it armed its fire control system to activate the gun camera. But that also activates the rockets and the machine guns in the same system, and the three buttons are only a half an inch apart on the stick, and all of them can be fired. At the time that the pilot activated the fire control panel, the control panel box began to smoke and the wiring melted down in it, and the airplane returned to its base. After the airplane left, Meyer had a recorder on his moped. The fighter is gone, the excitement is gone, the spacecraft is still there. He went to the moped, got out his recorder, and started recording the sounds of the spacecraft. What have we got? What's the problem?
This is the picture that I have propped up of the craft and the Swiss Mirage jet.
Started recording the sounds of the spacecraft, and I'm going to give you an idea of what that sounds like right now. Here you go. That's Meyer's voice. It says three aircraft passed through the airspace. Now back it up here so you can hear it. He's saying that 3 Swiss Army aircraft passed through while he was recording this. You're going to hear the jet fighter go through. The other one was a Pilatus Porter, and the third one was a Junkers transport. When we turned this over to the Naval Sound Research Laboratory at Groton, Connecticut, they identified the signature patterns of the Pilatus and the Junkers 52 and also the Mirage fighter. They also picked up a European siren. They picked up a barking dog. They picked up the chugging of a heavy tractor motor and several other things that they told us about. But he recorded the spacecraft sounds, and this is Meyer describing in his own voice what's on the tape, and then you'll hear the sounds come up loud. in the vicinity, about 300 yards from the witness, from Mr. Meyer. The dog was pushing his head in the grass and trying to put his paws over his ears, cover his ears, and barked, yelping like he was in pain. He did that when the ship was silent also. The spacecraft, there was no particular motion associated with any part of that sound. It wasn't making, flying any patterns or anything else. It was just sitting there, and all those sound changes took place. It also went completely silent. And after the Swiss Mirage jet fighter left the scene, a patrol car was vectored in by the radar center. They've lost their airplane. A police patrol car was vectored in with 2 officers in it. They drove up and got out. They were in the car with the engine running, didn't hear anything, I guess, at that point. When they jumped out of the car, the thing was humming at a low hum, sitting there. They asked him what's going on, and he said, "I'm recording the spacecraft." They said, "Spacecraft," and looked up, and about that time, it increased the tempo to a loud shriek. Both officers turned, jumped in the car, slammed the doors, backed it out, and raced out of there, and he didn't see them again.
Okay, that's it on the tape.
What's the problem with?
I'm going to end with part of this transmission I received at the time of the lunar landing. The telethought transmission said, "The universe, our brothers, is not for the conquering of any man. The universe is for the exploring of all men, sons and daughters of God. But in Earthman's desire to conquer lies the key to his unbalanced condition of consciousness. Therefore, the need at this period of time is to go within and balance the outer self with the spiritual self, the scientific intellect with the spiritual understanding, and thereby to become a balanced creature fit to venture into a universe created by the one Creator, our all-knowing one. If indeed you come in peace," they said, "in the name of all mankind, then that peace will encompass you and all your endeavors. If you come under guises of peace, with motives of conquering and spreading into the system the canker of mankind's own sores, then reconsider wherein you move. For space is not the friend of those who travel forth in might, but only those who travel forth in love for all created life. If indeed you come in peace for all mankind, then lay down your weapons of war and live in peace within your own planet, and venture forth into space to meet other races who also were created by the same being who created man. A time is coming of tremendous reassessment, reappraisal of values. A time is coming when Earthman, Earthwoman must meet themselves face to face, the self not only of the now, but of the many incarnations of their being on the planet called Earth. A time is coming for the ending of a cycle and the beginning of a new, and at this time Earthman meets Spaceman, Spacewoman, in the one light and under the one sun of this system. May the Creator, the All-Knowing One, our Radiant One, send forth light upon you, and may you walk ever in this light unto the dawning of the new age. That was part of the statement that was given through telethought to me at the time of the lunar landing. The evidence is overwhelming of the existence of extraterrestrials visiting this planet. This is not a religiously oriented idea. It deals with spirituality, which goes far beyond any world religion. The evidence is as solid and concrete as any presented in any other scientific circles as solid data. Know that these light beings, these interdimensional beings, and also the greys are here. You have choices to make, action to take, responsibilities to live up to as a human soul incarnate on planet Earth, as it comes to the end of this major cycle. I hope that you will come to the panel and also to the documentary movie this afternoon.